Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Today I wanted to make a video talking about the helmet system and my issues that I have with it, how can it be improved, and more importantly, do we even really need this system? Without further ado, let's get into the video. Hey, it's me again. I realized while editing the video that I didn't actually talk about how to improve the helmet system, and to be honest, there really isn't any way possible because of how certain things interact, and there's just certain skills that need to be buffed, while also certain ones that have been nerfed a bit, maybe too hard because of how the not using them on their proper characters and whatnot, as you would know. So I never actually got into talking about how to do that. And if you watch the intro and you're like, "Oh, well, how we change the helmet system?" I didn't actually explain that at all. So about that. Anyways, so I wanted to start off this discussion with Temple. Temple being the newest character, obviously he's the cool guy, rock star, whatever. Um, he has a really cool set of abilities where they actually do synergize with each other, which makes them getting rid of them actually kind of a problem for Helminth. And we get into like the Mesa meme where you actually you sub zoom off the four or the exalted weapon because haha it's funny. So pyrotechnics has the feature when Ripper's Wail, if you do the backbeat thing, whatever, you time it up with the metronome, then you get the bonus for Ripper's Wail. Same thing with Overdrive. When we get to Ripper's Wail, we get the bonuses from all that, and so it's even more effective. Meaning both of these are actually kind of important. Now, obviously, you can get rid of one and keep the other if you want to. There is a legitimate argument to be made for keeping both, and that's kind of the point that I wanted to get at. Where what do you get rid of when you're in this situation? Because Ripper's Wail is a huge damage increase. This gives you a bunch of crit. This could be considered a damage ability, so you could get rid of this if you want to swap out for something else, or if you just wanted to use his 4 as his damage, which makes sense. Um, or you get rid of the 4 because maybe you want to do a whole build around pyrotechnics and whatnot. So, what do you get rid of? I actually like this system where we have kits that not only work well together, but aren't fucking trash. There are plenty of characters in this game that have had abilities that are extremely underwhelming, and therefore, because it's a bad ability, I'm just going to replace it with a subzoom. Now, I personally do not do this because you do not need to use a single subzoom in this entire game on pretty much any character. I promise you, you can play the entire game fine and still path while whatever. There are certain exceptions that I have. So this is Garuda, and I think overall she's a very good character, S tier even. If I dare say so myself, right? Um, but she has a glaring issue, that being her healing. So she has Blood Altar as her normal ability, and that's all fine and good. But when you have a character who has an exalted weapon that's around melee, and you don't like getting shot, and a lot of times you kind of can't out heal your damage, or at least if you're trying to be very agile, you're constantly like putting down new blood altars and whatever, and so you're just kind of like cycling this ability. Now, the better option of that is maybe just forget the blood altar gameplay and go straight into gloom. This it's so annoying because you can pop Gloom and then just play the character without ever even thinking about having to use Blood Altar. Occasionally, reapply Dread Mirror and whatnot. But that's about it. Other than that, you just play the character like however you want. You can do Gun Ruda, you can do Nuke Ruda, you can do whatever. Now, with this being said, I do want to point out that I do have builds where I still use Blood Altar. I don't think Blood Altar is a bad ability, but like you see in this ability, even in the video, this is on Fortuna, which is the most open map in the entire game. Just complete sightlines from all fucking directions, and you just see her having to run around to every single fucking enemy, having to alter them. This is not ideal, dude. Like this is bad. Now, while the percentage healing is super high, especially you can have up to three of these things. I mean, I'm healing 49% of my health a second. That's kind of a lot. That can't be understated. You out heal most damage realistically, but there's better alternatives, and it's not that there are better alternatives. It's not just that. It's that it's so much better that when you have to look at these or abilities like this, how do you compare? Like it's such a night and day difference for ease of use, for how effective they are, and honestly, just how much time do you want to invest on this character using a subpar ability? So I would like to talk about Khora. Khora, I think, is another great example of a character who has a extremely bad ability that is just a guarantee sub zoom off on pretty much every single time you see someone with this character, they're gonna have it subsumed off, unless there's someone they're crazy like me, insane in the membrane, some might say. Venari has no point in this game. This ability does basically fuck all. I'm gonna be honest. Um, yeah, you can swap the modes or whatever, but why? Why would you? There's no need. And the cat is loud as hell. Holy shit. Um, the point I'm saying here is this ability could literally disappear. Nobody would care because you know why? They're already replacing it with Subsume. This is a huge issue in my opinion. Now, I think this whole ability needs to be scrapped and turned into something else. I think that also applies to Khora as a whole. I don't think a Khora's Whip Claw should just be an ability. It should be just an actual exalted weapon, but I digress. Um, but you have Venari, which does literally nothing, and so it's going to get subsumed off. Why even make the ability, right? Like, this is such a throwaway, it's kind of a joke. Like, the passive of the character should have been the cat. Last but not least, we have Nekros. Nekros is a weird character to me because he does one thing and he does it extremely well, and that's about it. With that being said, he has one of the most useless abilities ever invented on the history of Earth, Soul Punch. So people make the cope saying Soul Punch is actually really good because it allows you to target specific enemies that you want to be your shadows. This is such a cope argument. Nobody does this. I don't think I've ever actually used this ability in the way it's intended. I've used it. Fuck, I'll just cast the ability. Other than that, it does nothing. It literally does nothing for you. Now, obviously, like I said, you can get the shadow that you want, whatever. But do you really need to do that? No. You can play this character without this ability, and it's very easy to do so. Which means now we have another free subsume slot. Now, I want to be careful what I just said there, saying a free subsume slot, because this is another thing I need to hear is cope, okay? Where people will say often, or I've heard it in my comment sections, people said this before, a bad ability is actually a really good thing because it means it's an obvious pick for a subsume. The fact that is your mentality to the problem at hand is kind of funny. You are saying this ability is so bad that anything else would be better. That is effectively what you're saying. And if the helmet system wasn't in the game, that ability would drag down this character as a whole. It's just a net negative. That is a horrible line of thinking, and I would really like to push you to think otherwise about this. And maybe let's try and buff this, change this, maybe rework it into something new instead of just say, haha, bad ability subsume. Now, one of the things I really want to talk about is how the system is overall implemented and how weird I think it is. So, what you do with Helminth, as many of you would know, is you take the character and you sacrifice them, and then you unlock their ability, and they just come in here into this whole list of abilities, which means you can pick any of the set abilities that the character can obviously give you. I don't think that's inherently a bad concept. I think it's pretty neat, and it does allow people to open up for build ideas. But that's what it should be, is for build ideas, not because the ability's bad. And that's kind of like the crux of this whole video. And I would also like to mention that the list of abilities we have here are kind of weird. So Condemn, overall, I think is a very good perk. It's a CC and it gives you shield. That's cool. But then Condemn gets overshadowed by something like Pillage, because that is potentially a CC with an augment. It gives you shield and it armor strips. So it's just better. And so we kind of get this weird dilemma that even among Helminth abilities, that there's just bad ones in here. And that's not to say that they're overall bad, it's just that they can't compete with other ones. Breach Surge is notorious for being one of the most DPS abilities in the entire game for putting on certain characters, because you kind of can't. The amount of AoE and stun and just crit damage that you can get from this is just, or not crit, but status that you can get from this is ridiculous. Not to mention the damage multipliers. We also have, the grouping abilities as well, which those have their purpose on certain builds and whatnot. And I think this is actually a pretty good use, a useful source of an ability on certain characters. But as a whole, we kind of have just weird abilities that are just kind of thrown here for mix and matching. And I think that's kind of neat. That is a good. I'd also like to apologize. I obviously don't have all the abilities unlocked, but I want to talk about Evade. So Evade is such a cancerous ability. Um, it was kind of a meme for the longest time that if we ever got an invisibility, that characters like Ash and Loki would immediately be power crept out of the game by a fucking subsume. And we literally have that. And it's kind of hilarious in a very bad way. And it's very depressing this is in the game because this people would already say the game, oh, it's not difficult, but then you add something like this to the game, and it's like, what's even the point of balancing? Because you'll never die with this. Like, it's basically impossible. Um, the fact this was even looked over as a possible subzoom is just a joke. I think that overall is kind of a problem because we're never going to get this like era of okay, the game is balanced or the game can be actually truly difficult without restrictions on the player, which is what we see, in Netrocell stuff like that, where you have to take debuffs or some type of restriction or you're locked to a loadout, something like that. Also, can we talk about invigorations? Like, what the fuck is the point of this shit? Like, cool, you get buffs that last for like a week, on characters that don't really do anything. And I say don't really do anything because, like, okay, cool, I can go pick up my Inaros, get plus 1,000 armor, which to be fair is kind of a lot, and 200% melee critical chance, which, yeah, it does incentivize you to play that character, but why? Why do I need temporary buffs to make me want to play that character? Because you fucking broke them with a buff? Like, and by the way, this isn't even just a buff. This is such a crazy amount of, like, increases, like that, like 200% melee critical on anything is fucking ridiculous. To put that, just putting that out there. But why? Why is it here? Why do I need to have like this like week-long buff to make me really want to play this character? When you could have made the character, more appealable in the first place. Now, it's not to say I don't like Inara. I think Inara skin he's pretty fun to play as in own right. But it's just that you look at this. This is fucking laughable, dude. Like, that is a huge amount of crit chance. Now, all this to say that I don't actually care that Helminth is actually in the game, but it does allow the devs, DE, to be kind of just lazy when it comes to reworking characters or giving them buffs. Like, there's certain characters who've had needed reworks for the longest amount of times, and to be fair, we are getting those slowly, very slowly, but we are getting them. And there are other cases where an ability is maybe one buff away, or hell, even a lot of times it's a fucking like one augment, to making them just fucking absolutely cracked. Um, but we don't get those. Or when we do get those, it's years down the line. You will just inevitably see more people gravitate towards those characters because the augments or the buffs or whatever. Which I don't think is inherently a bad thing. It just kind of shows that nobody wants to play a character who is difficult to work with or bad. Now, that in itself isn't like a bad thing. To be fair, it's just if the character feels bad to play, then why do you want to play it? Now, obviously, not every character is built for everybody, but I personally try to play a bit of everybody. If there's a character I have no clue about, I'm not going to speak on them. There's no point for me to. I don't want to sound more stupid than I already am, right? Uh, but when it comes to Helminth, I don't like the laziness that comes from the devs. You have Steve Sinclair, basically straight up saying that, yeah, like, I made Helminth and it was meant to be this cool thing to get people to experiment, but they all just started running Roar. We're like, what the fuck, dude? Um, and the thing is, it's funny to me because why are you upset about that? I'm the person to be upset because it shows that you were too lazy to actually fix the problems, or that you blatantly added a damage multiplier into the game. Just you did that and then expected people to not, like, meta chasers to not go after that. Like, that was inevitably going to happen. And so what do you do now? You take that away from them? No, because then they'll start crying like babies. Um, you nerf it into the ground, well, they'll start crying like babies. It kind of gets really gray as far as what you can do in that situation. And my counterpoint to this is just buff the fucking characters so you don't need the subzooms in the first place. And for all the people who want to keep running that, they can, and we'll get to point and laugh at them for, running the same, like, four Helminth abilities. Now, I say this as someone who is kind of a Frost main, right? I have Ice Wave. What the fuck is this ability? I have to mention Frost basically every one of my videos. I am the Frost main, I'm that guy. But it's just we could just buff these abilities, make them actually meaningful to the game or to the character as a whole, and we can kind of circumvent these problems before they even popped up. But you choose to ignore them repeatedly. Ice Wave has been bad since like the third year the game's been out. Like, this ability cannot even kill level 40s, dude. Like, it's impossible for it to. At least level 40 enemies in like armor or whatever, right? Um, that's not a joke either. I've literally tested this. I have a video about it. I want to kind of give an olive branch here, right? I get shit on all the time in my YouTube section about how I don't know anything about the game. I never claim to know everything about the game. But I don't like Helminth, and I know there's a good amount of people who also like me don't like it, and there's people who are probably just in the middle. They don't really care. And outside of that, you have pretty much everybody else who was like, you kind of have to use it, or if you don't use it, then what the fuck are you doing, right? Um, I don't like subzooms because it takes away from that character's kit. Also, it allows the devs to be lazy and not buff that character. Also, on top of all that, it kind of fudges the fucking balancing of the game. The game's already horribly imbalanced. Like again, what people already say that, oh, there's not any difficult content, but then you can literally just throw roar and nourish on every single build. Of course, there's never going to be any challenging content. You've literally circumvented the challenge. So, with that being said, tell me what you guys think. I've made a video like this in the past. I got fucking creamed for it. I'm not even gonna lie. People are mad as hell about me over that shit. Um, I've tried to be not as, abrasive this time. Just saying that I don't like this and I would like there to be buffs instead of just go Helminth it, Like, if you want a unique build and you get your uniqueness from Helminth, I think that's really cool. There are very few cases that I see in a build where it's like, oh, they're making this like really obscure ability that nobody really, touches or thinks about, and they make that part of their build. I enjoyed stuff like that. I think that's neat. But in most cases, let's be honest, that's not what's happening. And that's kind of the problem with Helminth as a whole because you add a powerful ability over running the base kit that's just a dog shit one. Even in Helminth in its own right, it has own like power conflicts with like what ability is better than this or what's the most optimal I can run here because people are and naturally wired to run what is most efficient. Um, that's just how we are. Anyways, I leave it up to you guys. Tell me what you guys think. Am I crazy? Am I stupid? Am I a dummy? Uh, anyways, with that being said, thanks for watching.